Hi, and welcome to Oh Crap Potty Training with Jenny's online potty training class. This class is designed to give you the basics of potty training along with some modern potty training issues and troubleshooting without having to read a book. The class is broken down into small video segments that you can watch and rewatch at your convenience, so you don't have to go through all of this information at once. However, whatever pacing makes sense for you is what you can do. The class itself will cover the myths of potty training, preparing for potty training, the blocks of learning, and troubleshooting as well. To introduce myself, my name is Jenny Phelps. I am your certified Oh Crap potty training consultant. I got into this work because I needed a lot of help figuring out how to potty train my child, which I think is a very common issue today. I started out clueless, really, at how to do this. I read a lot of books, and even after all that, I had come to the conclusion that she was ready, but I didn't know how to actually go about practically doing this. That would be when I stumbled upon Oh Crap potty training, which gave me the confidence to train my daughter at 20 months. I can say that I enjoyed the experience, which I think is very uncommon these days. Within a short time frame, I had other parents coming to me for potty training advice, calling my daughter a potty training revelation, which is really interesting as a parent. And there's also a free reader support forum that you have access to as part of taking this class. I stayed on after I trained my daughter in that reader support forum, helping other people. When the chance for an official certification came along, I really leapt at the opportunity to be able to pay my positive potty training experience forward to others. I have worked personally with Jamie on nearly 100 clients in addition to my own clients as far as potty training consulting, and I have a decade of experience as an educator, a lifetime of work as an artist, so the creativity and thoughtfulness that are necessary for those disciplines I also bring to my work as a potty training consultant. Lastly, on this short video, to introduce Oh Crap potty training to you so you know what it is, this is a curriculum that was created by Jamie Glowacki, who is also lovingly referred to as the Pied Piper of Poop. She has a decade of experience as a social worker, and in that work, potty training was just part of her job. So at that point, it wasn't really a hot button issue, it was just something that you did. But in order to help her with that work, she interviewed generations of parents and took the best practices from each of them to develop her potty training curriculum. When she had her own son and decided to train him at 22 months, she stepped out of her mom circles for a week, and when she came back, she really didn't anticipate the reaction she was going to get, which was, how can you potty train your child at 22 months? Especially if they're a boy. People thought it was impossible. So she had people coming to her for advice that turned into potty training classes, Oh Crap Potty Training the book, and then she trained me, your certified consultant. So to start off with, a lot of parents come to a potty training class like this wanting to know the big trick of potty training. As a potty training expert, I can tell you that there isn't really a trick in that sense. The trick is you. So your commitment, your consistency, and your calm throughout the process are what helps to lead you and your child to success. You can think of this as a lot like helping your child learn how to eat. So we have a nice little baby spoon to help demonstrate here. We know when we hand our child this spoon that it's going to end up on the floor at some point. It might end up here on our face, food flicked across the room, and this is going to happen over and over again. We don't then decide that they're not ready to learn how to eat because they can't just pick up a spoon and put it in their mouth and put food in and eat right away. Instead, we know that we have to keep showing them the tools over and over again, that this is a learning process. So calm, patient, and consistent. Just like learning to eat, we know that there's a certain age range in which kids are generally ready to potty train. That age range is 20 to 30 months, and I will talk about that more in a little bit. Despite that, it's still a skill that has to be learned. So you want to think of this as a learning process. The problem here, or what ups the ante a little bit, is that when your child messes up, instead of food on the floor, which in and of itself is no fun to clean up, we have pee or poop on the floor. So that makes the process itself messier as far as learning, and puts a lot of other potentially emotional reactions into it. You just want to remember that accidents are part of the process. It's a learning process, that they need us there to support them, and that's why you are the biggest trick. Okay, before I get into the how-tos of potty training, I'm going to talk about some of the myths and misconceptions that are out there, because there are a lot of them. So I'll talk about two in this video. Boys are easier, or girls are easier than boys, and rewards. The first big myth that's been around for a long time is the idea that girls are easier to train than boys. This is really just not true. Anyone who has more than one child, especially if they're of the same gender, knows that that there are very different temperamental and personality differences within individual children, even if they're raised in the same environment. And those factors are more important to the potty training process than whether your child is a boy or a girl. So rather than thinking about it as gender, you can think of it as training the child you have, that they have a personality and a temperament that you have to work with in this process. When it's put as boys versus girls, it becomes a way to, or an excuse sometimes, for delaying potty training boys, and there's really no reason to do that. If anything, boys can be easier to train because physically they can really just pee anywhere much more easily than a girl can. The second big myth that I want to talk about is rewards. Now, this can work for some kids, but as a potty training expert, I've seen the other side of how far this can go. So for most kids, what happens instead of it working is it turns into a huge power struggle that just escalates and escalates, and then you have to back out of it. I think it's easiest to think of potty training as a developmental milestone, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. And if you think about it that way, then you can relate it, for example, to walking. So did you give rewards for any other kind of milestone? Rewards for walking, for example, 4 more steps, I'll give you an M&M. Most people don't do this, so there's no reason to do that for potty training either. It's helpful to think of potty training as fitting into the rest of your parenting style. If you are not giving rewards for other things, there's no reason to introduce rewards as a concept for potty training. Instead, you're simply resetting expectations of where pee and poop go. The more normal potty training is for your child, the more your child will understand that this is expected behavior that everyone else does. Also, long-term, as far as parenting, you just really don't want to open the door for rewards for expected behavior. That can turn into all kinds of other things down the road that are also difficult to deal with. The third big myth that I'm going to talk about, and will take me a little while to go through, is the concept of wait till they're ready. Now, in some ways I feel a little bad criticizing this because there is legitimacy to it. It was reaction to the more punitive potty training practices that used to take place in the past, but the reaction has gone very far in a different direction. So wait till they're ready sounds good, and to some extent it is true, but the issue with this, there are a few. One is that wait till they're ready itself doesn't really tell you what ready looks like. So a lot of parents, first of all, just hear wait, and that's what they hear. But second of all, a lot of parents hear ready and think that ready means something along the lines of their child waking up one day and saying, all right, I'm ready, let's do it, take the diapers off, we're going to learn how to use the potty, and that really just doesn't happen. The second issue with wait till they're ready is that it really doesn't cover what you should do when your child is ready, which is where I was at when I was trying to figure out how to potty train my daughter. We want to keep in mind that peeing and pooping are primal acts, but where we put them, which is potty training, is socialization. And social skills have to be taught. They have to be modeled by parents. So that's not an innate thing that children just know where we're going to expect pee and poop to go. We have to teach them this. Potty training is going to take energy and focus no matter what age you train, so it doesn't just get easier with time. In fact, I will talk about it later, but it can get more difficult depending on the circumstances. And it does almost never feel like a good time in our very busy day and age. So we're way overscheduled, most of us. We're all going in different directions, so we're all very busy. If you are just generally busy, then you do want to figure out when is a good time to fit potty training into your schedule. If you do have something that's very specific, acute, finite, coming up very soon that you'll be done with, then you can delay potty training until after that. So for example, if you're moving in 2 weeks or taking a big vacation in 2 weeks, then certainly you don't need to potty train right now. A few weeks is not going to make a huge difference for most people. Instead of readiness, with OCRAP potty training, we talk about capability. For me, I think the easiest metaphor for this is the idea of having a child. Was I ready? Absolutely not. I probably was never going to be ready. But was I capable and capable of figuring out what to do on the other end once I had a baby here? Yes. So you go through the labor pains and you deal with the aftermath. The same thing is true of potty training, which is just taking the diapers off and dealing with the aftermath. It also helps to know the interest in the potty does not increase with time. It generally peaks and then starts to fade away. So if you're at a point where your child is showing some interest, you definitely want to start thinking about hopping on the potty train. If you do wait too long, you can have a 6-year-old in diapers. This does happen, and we are starting to see more of this happening. So that's where the extremes of wait till they're ready can be overinterpreted or taken in too far the other direction. Signs of capable to help you through this. There are a number of factors that you can look at as far as your child being aware of the process. So if your child's aware of peeing and pooping at all, if they, for example, retreat to a corner to pee or poop, if they are soiled and they ask for their diaper to be changed or point out that they're wet, all of those are really great signs that your child is definitely capable of learning how to potty train. But there are other factors that are not pee and poop related that also can play into capability. So if they can communicate their needs in any way, especially a physical need like thirst or hunger, and it doesn't have to be a verbal communication, it can be signing or whatever, however your child communicates, doesn't have to be saying it. If they can throw a tantrum about anything that they want, again, communicating their needs and wants to you, then they're also capable of learning how to use the potty. So last thing on the capability, we know that the ideal time frame is about 20 to 30 months. The reason for this is that there is a lull in other milestones, so they're not, they might be perfecting walking, but they're not getting on the ground of learning to walk for the most part. It also is before individuation really kicks in. So the three-nager that everyone is talking about these days is a real thing. It's a different level of individuation than with the 2-year-old. So both of those factors play into the 20 to 30 month range being a really great time frame to potty train your child. Okay, so the fourth myth that I want to cover is putting the potty chair out so your child can get used to it. Now, I'm giving you a lot of expert advice here, and that doesn't mean I didn't make any mistakes along the way myself, so I totally made this mistake. I thought this sounded really good. Now, just for demonstration purposes, in my little webcam area, I have a potty chair here. This is not a scary piece of furniture. If anything, you can see how small this is. This was designed to be a child-sized version of a toilet, which is less scary than the big toilet, which can be kind of imposing. It's got a big hole in it. It's not meant for children. The potty chair itself just doesn't take getting used to in that way. In my in-person classes, I would do a little demo with a stroller, but you can imagine this in your mind as well. You didn't, for example, take a stroller and put it out so your child could play with it and get used to it. Instead, most of us just put the stroller out, put the child in it, and go out for a walk. So the same thing is true of potty chair. It's just a piece of furniture for a very specific purpose. Now, what goes along with this, putting the potty chair out, tends to be a secret hope that the child will potty train themselves, which again, just is not going to happen. It helps to get into a toddler point of view, which is what I do in my work as a potty training consultant all the time now. If you look at it from their point of view, they really do have it good in diapers. Someone else is taking care of all of this stuff for them. Toddlers also really don't like change, so there's no impetus for the most part for them to instigate this change on their own. Now, what might happen if you put the potty chair out is your child might occasionally sit and pee, but they need your consistency and commitment to help to make this the norm, that expected behavior again, as far as where they're going to consistently put their pee and poop. If you have put the potty chair out and it's in the living room or something like that, you probably know that it very quickly turns into anything other than what it was supposed to be for. So a toy, a hat, a storage container. So if that has happened to you, you want to put the potty chair away until you are ready to train. Now, if you put the potty chair out and it's just in the bathroom and it's only ever been used for pee or poop or an attempt at pee and poop, then it's okay to leave it out if you want to. You just don't need to make a lot of fanfare about it until you're actually ready to train. Okay, now the final myth that I want to talk about is the idea of casual potty training. So this is potty training with a diaper on. Now this can be done. It takes much longer than what we do with OCRAP as far as that method. But there are a few issues that come up with this that I'd like to go through. One is that there tends to be no sense of urgency with this process. So you can imagine if you're waited a long time to get to the front of the line at a supermarket and you're just about to check out, if your child doesn't have a diaper on and they say they need to pee, you can bet that you are getting yourselves to the bathroom to take care of their need. If they have a diaper on, you are much more likely to say something like, oh, well, the worst that can happen is that they'll pee in their diaper. Now this really quickly turns into, oh, just pee in your diaper. And the second you've done that, you've taught the opposite of potty training, which is where you expect pee and poop to go. One of the other big issues with this is the idea of mixed signals. So it's very easy when you're potty training with a diaper on to just focus on the easy catch times. Say, for example, when they just get up for the morning, go pee on the potty, but not to really be paying attention to their need and their feeling to pee throughout the day. So it ends up very often teaching children that sometimes you pee in the potty and sometimes you pee in diapers, and then it makes it really difficult to try to institute the idea that you only pee in the potty at the point when it becomes crunch time, which eventually is going to happen. The third issue is going back to a toddler's point of view, and I think it's really hard for adults to understand this, but I'll talk about it a little bit. This is actually harder for your child than potty training without a diaper on. If you think about this, you're asking them to wear something that they've worn their whole lives, but then not to use it. It's very similar to an idea of like weaning off of a binky, if your child ever used a binky, by giving it to them, but then asking them not to suck on it. It's not just an emotional security blanket, which is very difficult to ask them not to use, but it is also, there's a physical aspect to it. There's a muscle memory that comes from having feeling a diaper against your butt as a child that tells you it's okay to pee or poop. So it's physical and emotional, and it makes it much harder for them to actually be able to hold their pee or poop for the potty. So now I'm going to move on to what you should do for potty training. And the first thing I want to talk about is mental preparation. If you go back to what I originally said, that you were the biggest trick, this mental preparation is really important. Your mindset is really crucial to the process. If you've decided your kid is capable, now you have to really believe it, which can be easier said than done once you get into having the diapers off. It's okay if you're unsure or if you're a little nervous, but you don't want to lead with it and show it. As an example, if accidents are devastating to you, you're going to be having mood swings throughout the day, your kid is going to pick up on those swings, that leads to an edgy, anxious child, and that becomes an environment in which your child can't learn. So again, this is a learning process. Also helping with the mental preparation, you have to let go of any idea of how long this is going to take. So you really just don't know until you dive in. Now I know that we are saturated with 3-day boot camps, so we have wait till they're ready and then the 3-day boot camps, and I think the combination of those two things makes this especially difficult for parents to go through these days. If you think of this as a developmental milestone, what other milestone do we expect a child to go from clueless to experts in 3 days? It's really just not realistic. Now there is a reason that the 3-day boot camps exist. Many kids do get the basics in 3 days. I would say generally speaking, for most kids it's more like 3 to 7 days. That is just the basics. So they then still need time to hone and solidify their skills. That doesn't mean no accidents, for example. I can tell you that the #1 killer of potty training is pressure on your child. And the idea, if you go into it with the idea that it's going to be done in 3 days, that's just too much pressure for the child. So, on to how to actually prepare for potty training. The first thing you want to do is set a date. Now, you could do this tomorrow, or you can wait a while and enjoy your last few weeks or however long you take with your child in diapers. Holiday weekends are great. A lot of working parents especially try to do like a holiday weekend and take like 1 extra day off if they can to get like a good 4 days in, which is a good time frame to try to work through the basics. Basically, you want as much time as you can possibly get. I already talked about putting the potty chair away. If you don't already have a potty chair, then you should get one. Parents who don't get one end up at midnight on day 1 of potty training in Toys R Us looking for a potty chair. I also have here a travel potty. This is available on my website under products. This is called a Potette, and this is really great because it folds up real easily in your purse. It's hard to gauge the size here, but it's pretty small. Folds up really easily in your purse. It can be used as a tiny little potty or pulled out and used as a seat insert. The insert that I had in this liner, you buy separately if you want it. Otherwise, you just use it with plastic bags, and that works really well for a lot of people. Generally speaking, on potty chairs, you just don't want one that has a lot of bells and whistles. So again, you're trying to think of this as not being a toy. The closer it is to just like a chair that you sit on to pee and poop and doesn't have a lot of other things going on, the better. Third thing to help you prepare if you have time is it's great to work on clothing manipulation before actually potty training. So you can, for example, have a dressing party and work on pulling pants up and pushing them down. Can be really helpful for a lot of kids. Not crucial, but can help. Before you actually start potty training, you do want to cover anything precious in your house so that you're not having pressure and anxiety on yourself or your child about getting a spill on the floor. Fifth thing to do, you want to clear your social calendar as much as you can for a week. So I know in contemporary society that this sounds horrible, but you can think of it this way. Most kids are overscheduled these days anyway. So taking some time away from all of those activities is not a bad thing in the long run. But as far as potty training goes, the more you have planned, the more stress and pressure you're putting on your child. So you want to set your guys up for the best success possible. The more time that your child has with you in a familiar home setting, the better. Definitely with all things like this, you want to talk to your partner before you potty train. So assuming you're in that situation, you want to get on the same page. If they have reservations, you want to know what those reservations are and address them before you start so that you have a supportive environment to work in. You can give them a cheat sheet of the different blocks. You can tell them the different kinds of prompting that are helpful, and also let them know that you might be going crazy for a few days. If there's other things they can do to help that are not potty training related, then let them know. For example, if you want them to take care of dinner for a few days for you, that's a really awesome way to be able to help, and it helps them to feel like they're supporting you. Last thing, again, this is if you aren't starting, say, tomorrow, about a week before the big day, you can cue your child into the fact that you're going to get rid of the diapers. So you can say just something very matter-of-fact with no fanfare. On Sunday, we're going to throw away your diapers. So their brains can kind of start wrapping around that idea. So the last thing before you really get started potty training, as I said, your mindset is very crucial to this process. So you want to just check in with yourself and really make sure that your head is screwed on right, so to speak. So you can ask yourself these questions and dig as deep as you can so that you're fully sure of everything before you start. So first, you don't want to potty train just to give this a try. So we say either do or don't potty train, but trying to potty train is kind of like trying to quit smoking for anyone who has been there. You're kind of setting yourself up with the expectation that you're not really going to be able to follow through. So you want to make sure that you are potty training, not just trying, giving it a whirl. Number two, make sure that you really believe that your child is capable. Number three, make sure you have your bearings on why you're potty training. So we want this to be what's in the best interest of the child, it's the right time, but have those reasons clear in your head so you don't get confused along the way, because it is really easy to forget or lose sight of that. Number four, check in with yourself. You don't have to check in with your friends per se, but check in with yourself about what you think your friends are going to think of potty training. If you know that you have friends that are not going to be supportive, then you can just try to keep them out of the process for a little bit if you can. If you know that you're going to face opposition, then just make sure that you're extra prepared for the process. So again, that you're very clear about what you're doing before you do it. That's also a really good time to join the Reader Support Forum if you haven't already, because it's a very supportive atmosphere full of people who are doing the same thing as you. Okay, so on to the main event, which would be how to ditch the diapers. Potty training is a process of going from clueless to I peed to I'm peeing to I need to pee. So you can think of it as kind of simple along those lines, and that's how you can measure progress as well. We'll look at potty training as blocks of learning, so broken down into different sections. And like a tower of blocks, you want to make sure that your foundation is steady and stable before you move on to the next. The blocks way of breaking this down also helps you with troubleshooting to see where things went wrong. So generally speaking with troubleshooting, the first thing you want to do is just go back to what was the last successful block, and it's pretty much never a problem to go back to a little bit of block one time if you feel like you need some solidifying of skills. The blocks of learning are broken down as follows. 1, naked. 2, commando, so that means pants with no underwear. 3, out and about in the world. 4, underwear. 5, consistent self-initiation. 6, night and nap unless you're choosing to do it all together. And 7 would be college, probably still needing the occasional prompt. But that does help to prepare you for the idea that you are going to need to prompt for quite a while and probably for years to come, at least sometimes. So we will start with block 1, which would be day 1 of potty training. You want to think of this as a fun day to spend with your kid, so you want to normalize the process as much as possible, like I've already talked about. You'll be home all day long, so no outings planned, and it will be a very long day because of that. You want to arrange to not have to do other things aside from helping to train and watch your child. So no dishes, no vacuuming, cleaning, no computers, phones, books, magazines. You really want your focus fully on your child. Your child will be naked all day because you need to be able to see their signals, and you are not going to have time to deal with pants in order to get them to the potty. You want your child contained to 1 or at most 2 rooms at a time. You want the potty chair accessible, so if you change rooms, that's fine, but you want to bring the potty chair with you. If your child is over 24 months, then it's not a bad idea to give a little bit of extra fluids, just like a couple of juice boxes worth, to give them a little bit more pee practice. If they're under 24 months, you really don't want to do that. Their bodies are smaller and can't handle that, so that's really up to you if that makes sense. To get started, you will take the diaper off your child, which sounds a little scary to start off with. You want to cue them into the process, so say something along the lines of, today you're going to be a big girl or a big boy and put your pee and poop in the potty. I'm going to teach you and help you to learn this. It's very fun. Yay! So whatever works for you, you can modify all of these prompts to fit your style. But you want to think of this as like preparing them to go to the dentist. You might have anxiety, but you don't want to communicate that to your child. You don't want to ask okay, and I know so many of us, including myself, just unconsciously put that on the end of a sentence. That is a question, and in fact you really don't want to ask any questions at this point because you don't want to give them an opportunity to say the favorite toddler word, which would be no. During this first day, you will have to watch your child like a hawk all day long. You're going to wait for the pee to come, and when it starts to come, you don't want to panic, you don't want to scream, you just want a nice, gentle, even voice, something along the lines of, oh, hold it, honey, gently pick them up and put them on the potty, quick but not abrupt. There will be some pee on the floor. You can clean that up after you've taken care of the rest. Hopefully with this, some pee will get in the potty. Even if it's a couple of drops, that's enough at this point. So with that, you can do whatever kind of celebrating fits your parenting style. So high fives, dancing, you don't want to be totally over the top with it, but you can definitely be happy about it and celebrate. If you have a more reflective parenting style, then you can reflect back. Thank you, you got your pee in the potty. So it can be anywhere along the spectrum of those sorts of ideas. Now, during this first day, you're going to be trying to get a feel for what kinds of signs your child shows before they pee, and what kinds of intervals, how frequently they pee. Now, both of those things can change, so that can be frustrating. They'll evolve, really, but you want to get a feel for where you're at with that on the first day. So typical signs that a kid is about to pee would be like a deer in the headlights kind of look, stopping what they're doing or freezing. If they're sitting, going to standing up instead. If you see your child start to do these kinds of things, you can prompt, and I'll talk a lot about prompting throughout the class. So a prompt at this point would look something like, come, it's time to pee, or you're dancing around like you need to pee, sit down. Both of those things are very effective at this point. Now, it is frustrating that you will get pee on the floor, but it is more effective to wait for the pee than to try at random times, especially if your child doesn't pee a lot. And I've worked with kids who really only pee 3 times a day, no matter how many fluids you give. That kind of time frame, if you're prompting even every hour or every 90 minutes, that's way over prompting for a child at that point. At all times, you want something that communicates your desired outcomes. So you want to, if pee gets on the floor, tell your child pee or poop goes in the potty so that they know what you're expecting. And based on where you're at this point, you want something that's a mommy voice, however you use that. So you want to be gentle but firm. You do not want to say it's okay if pee gets on the floor. For a lot of kids, and I see this with even older students that I work with as well, this implies permission. So you don't want to say it's okay. Now, on this first day, if you're diapering at nap, then you just put a diaper on. You can say something like, I'm going to put a diaper on you now. You're doing such a great job today, but your nap is a long time. When you get back up, we'll take the diaper right off so that they have an idea of what the rest of the day is going to be like. Before I go further with block 1, I do want to talk a little bit about poop. This is the biggest chapter in the book, and it is a big deal for a lot of kids in potty training for a reason. It can be hard for us to think about this from our adult mindset again, but we want to try to go back to a toddler's point of view. It sounds kind of gross, but the only feeling that your child has known as far as poop is the warm, squishy feeling of poop up against their butt when it's in their diaper. So it's a very different thing to let it just fall out, even into a small potty. For many adults, poop can be big enough that it feels like you're losing part of yourself, and with toddlers much smaller bodies, poop is still pretty big, so it can feel like they're losing something, and it's a very personal thing in that way. So you want to keep in mind that this is what your child is going through. We also have many dietary issues these days, so you do want to try to make sure that the diet is as good as possible as you can going into potty training. And there are a few things you can do to help the poop move as smoothly as possible, especially during those early days as well. Now, I know for adults, the first thing that we start to think about is fiber, and that actually can have, if you give too much fiber to a young kid, it can have the opposite effect of kind of stopping them up. So the first thing that we go to with OCRAP potty training is good fats. So avocado, coconut, yogurt, full-fat yogurt. Hydration is really important, so you want to make sure that you're giving plenty of fluids, and keeping hydrated helps to keep everything moving smoothly as well. And you want to avoid foods that stop you up. Bananas is a really common culprit and isn't necessarily the first one that we think of. So try not to give too many bananas in the first days of potty training. One of the other difficulties that we have with pooping is that in Western culture, we're using toilets to sit and poop. Squatting is a much more ergonomically correct position to poop in. So if your child's having some trouble, you can put some books under their feet to raise them up more into a squatting position. Can be really helpful. There are some things that you can do before you start potty training to help prepare for this. One would be modeling for your child, bringing them to the bathroom with you, and that way when we're talking about poop in particular, they can see that it might take a while, that there's grunting potentially involved, that no one dies when the poop falls out, and that they can see that everyone does this. You don't want to talk about poop as dirty or yucky or embarrassing, because those values will transfer to your child and then they'll be more likely to try to hold the poop in. A great book to help with this is the book Everyone Poops by Taro Gomi, which is available in many bookstores, on Amazon, and so forth. So that's a great thing that you can read to your child when they're on the potty if you want to. Again, as with for pee, it's better to sit and wait for the poop than to sit and try. Signs for pooping that it's going to come are different than for pee, so you would be looking for grunting, a look of concentration, walking around on tiptoes, grabbing their butt, grabbing their belly. Sudden crankiness is a huge one also, so look out for all of those things. If you see that happening, you want to gently put your child on the potty, get them comfortable. You may need them to be there for a little while. You can read books. What worked for us was putting a step stool in front of the potty with puzzles. It was a great thing to concentrate on and take the focus off of the poop. So whatever kinds of things might work for your child, you can try. But you want to be comfortable and supportive. If the poop starts to come, then just gently you can say, okay, keep it coming, let it fall out, let it slide out. So you want passive verbs, a nice even tone. You want to encourage them, but you don't want to pressure them. Some kids do start to cry, and if so, you can just gently hug them. Usually that only lasts for a couple of times if that is something that your child does. When you're done, you can plop the poop into the potty and flush. Most kids really like doing that. And for them, that is the reward. They don't really need anything more than that. Again, you can praise in your preferred way, whatever works with your parenting style. And it's also great to talk about how much better it feels to get it out than to keep it in. Most kids will reduce the frequency of pooping, so depending on how much they're already pooping, they might drop one throughout the day. Some kids do go down to just one a day or every other day even. Anything along those lines is generally fine. And do keep in mind that a lot of kids do not poop right away, even in the first few days. It can take a while to get over that hump. If that's where you're at, don't freak out, just assume that it's coming. Until your child is comfortable with pooping, it's best to go back to block 1 at any signs that the poop is about to come, to make it as easy on them as possible. So by the end of the first day, we're just looking for having some idea of how often your child pees and what their pee signs are. We're just looking for progress, not perfection. So this process is going from clueless to I peed to I'm peeing and so forth. So progress along those lines. Anything is really okay in the first few days. A lot of kids look like they're not making any progress and then suddenly just get it. So progress can be hard to measure within a day or from day to day. So you want to kind of look at it over the course of a few days at a time as much as you can. At the end of the first day, you want to know and be prepared for the fact that you'll be exhausted. Plan ahead to have a nice little treat for yourself, some wine or some chocolate or a beer or whatever works for you. And don't underestimate the power of sleep. Your child's brain will be putting all of this stuff together from night to night, and that always helps. You'll know you're at the end of block 1 when your child is able to pee or poop naked with or without prompting. And this, again, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be consistent. For many, this takes 1 to 3 days. For most, it takes more like 3 to 7 days. I have seen it take as long as 2 weeks. So again, you want to let go of time frames on this. You can also check in with how you feel. If you're starting to feel hopeful, like they're starting to get it, then you can move forward. If you really feel like there's no progress after, say, 3 or 4 days, then the first thing you want to do is just check in with yourself Make sure you're not distracted, hovering, over prompting, putting pressure on your child. Sometimes it doesn't feel like we're doing these things, but to them it does. And keep in mind they've got smaller bodies, we're much bigger than them, so all of those things can play a role. To move forward from block 1, I highly recommend a block 1 to 2 transition, which we call half and half. This hands your child success by getting a good pee in naked in the morning, so starting in block 1, and then you can go out and practice wearing pants. Always being home by the time that you think your child is going to need to pee so that you can have the pants off and be naked again at that time. So they get practice wearing the pants, but they also have the success that they've already built on with block 1 of being able to pee naked on the potty. So this would look like your child getting up in the morning, getting a good pee in, depending on how you're feeling. I recommend just starting with like a 15-minute walk around the block, something like that, and then you can build that into longer and longer outings. This really builds a sense of pride and feeling of accomplishment in both you and your child. It is not cheating the process. You really don't want to rush the blocks. Just because you've had block 1 success does not mean your child is fully potty trained. So rather than kicking the blocks out from under them, you want to stabilize the blocks and slowly move forward. Now, when we're talking about wearing pants, so for block 2, we're talking about commando. We're talking loose clothes, no underwear at this point, because underwear is too close to that muscle memory of a diaper. For girls, a great block 2 clothing are skirts. For boys, nice loose boxers are great. You basically want as easy and as little clothing as possible. Elastic waistbands. Don't worry about jeans, zippers, snaps, buttons. All of those things are just going to slow the process down and make it harder. Again, we're trying to make it as easy on everyone as possible. There are also a few prompts that are really great at this point. So it's really good to, rather than talking about needing to pee, talking about the feeling to pee. So, oh, you look like you have the feeling to pee. If you think about this, toddlers are very literal. The feeling to pee kicks in before the need, the absolute need, does. So it's a great way to help them recognize the feelings sooner. Another great prompt at this time, especially if you're thinking about like trying to get out or transition activities, would be a sandwich prompt. So this is something like, let's go potty, then wash our hands, then go eat lunch, which takes the focus off of the potty and also builds this idea that the potty is part of your routine. So before I move forward from here, I just want to take some time and talk about troubleshooting. Block 1 and 2 are really the meat of potty training, and so this is where troubleshooting is most likely going to arise. So whatever block you're on, day 2, and this is really day 2-ish, I've seen this kick in day 3, 4, 5, and so forth, can bring resistance. A lot of kids go through a resistance phase. Again, if you put your mind into what your toddler is going through, the first day is like a fun day to spend with mom or dad. The second day becomes more real. So, oh, it's no longer fun and games anymore. Oh, we're still doing this. It's not as fun once you've made it through one day. A lot of times this is where parents who don't have a plan, like, oh crap, to help them through this, give up. And one thing that happens, because we have this combination of wait till they're ready and 3-day boot camps, we tend to interpret resistance as just not being ready. Really, nothing is further from the truth. So if your child can put up a fight about this and put up a fight for something that they want, then they're definitely ready to potty train as well. Usually what happens when you have resistance is that your child is reacting to something, and again, it may not feel like this to you, but they're much more sensitive, they absorb, they're totally connected into all of our unconscious signals, so keep that in mind. They're reacting to over-prompting, to frequent prompting, hover prompting, so kind of standing over them or too close after prompting, talking too much, what so many of us, including myself, are guilty of, wanting to do it themselves, so, us giving them too much help. So for many things, troubleshooting in potty training is going to involve backing off. This is really hard to do. It requires a leap of faith that your child can do this on their own. So backing off is good for power struggles, for resistance, for when your child just flat out says no, which very likely is going to happen at some point. You want to keep in mind that prompting is a reminder. We cannot make them do this. So you don't need to make them sit. You can't make them pee. And the more pressure you put on them, the harder it is for them to do this. There are a number of ways that you can work through backing off. A great one is what's called a throwaway prompt. So again, it's just reminding your potty's there when you're ready to sit. And that's all. You can even walk away if your child is a kid who tends to want an audience for whatever resistance they're showing. You want to remember not to talk too much. So simple directives: go, pants, sit, pee. Maybe not quite that simple, but close enough. And then stop talking. Remember that kids, toddlers, need about 30 seconds to process what we're saying. So you want to give them that time. And if we fill that time up with us continuing to talk, are you sure you need to potty? Please come with me. Talking like that, which many of us, including myself, do, that takes away from their ability to process this and make that decision for themselves. If you get a flat out no, there are a couple of ways you can address this. You can say, okay, I trust you to go when you're ready, or sit when you're ready, and then you have to actually trust them. If you don't think you can do that, you can say something like, okay, let's try, and if nothing comes out, then we can try again later. But you can't use that as an excuse to then prompt them every 10 minutes or anything like that. Now, when you're working through backing off, if this is what you have to do, which many of us do have to do at some point, know that there might be more pee on the floor temporarily. It can take a few days to work through this, but usually that's really all it takes. So I'm going to go through a few other small troubleshooting areas. The resistance and backing off is a huge one, but there are some other things that come up as well. Really common thing to happen when you're moving from block 1 to 2 is if your child just starts peeing right through the pants. That generally means that they're just not quite ready to be in pants yet. So you would want to either go back to a block 1 to 2 transition, a half and half, or just straight up into block 1 for a little bit longer. They just need some more learning. And this is where I said troubleshooting usually involves starting with going back to the last successful block. Similar thing. That's exactly the idea with this. A huge one that comes up for many people is the bedtime potty pit. So this is when your child delays bedtime because they know they can by saying that they need to pee or poop. And the poop can really turn into a long one. So if you see this starting to happen, you want to factor extra time into your bedtime routine. So start a half an hour earlier so than you normally would. And then you have to deal with this by giving them either a certain number of chances or a certain time frame. So, okay, 15 minutes, we're going to put your diaper on for bed. Okay, now we're at 10, now we're at 5. Once they're on the potty that last time, which is whatever your cutoff is, you can say, okay, it's bedtime. If you don't pee now, then you can hold it for morning, so that you have given them a good go and a good chance to do this. But if they're just using it as a delay tactic, it's not going to work. So we need them sleeping well. So after that, you're done, and you would just do bedtime routine from there the way that you normally would. Another big one that comes up is having trouble releasing once they're sitting on the potty. A great phrase for this is the phrase, we need to hear the pee. Again, toddlers are really literal, and that hear the pee can really help with that particular aspect. Another way to get around this is using disposable cup or a solo cup. This is great. They can pee into it. You can call it a parent-approved container. This is generally temporary, and they can see the pee coming out and they can hear it better. So that helps with the release factor for a lot of kids. There's an impetus to fill up the cup. Now, the solo cup is also great if your child decides after the first day or so that they hate the potty. It's great for block 1 if you're having trouble getting them onto the potty, or if picking them up is interfering with the process, you can slide either the potty or a cup under them instead. You can also use it in the car, you can use it in the bathtub. All of those things are useful as far as the solo cup. Now, to move on from block 2, you want to see some progress. Just remember that not every day is going to be better than the last. Progress can be uneven. If you've done fine with block 1 or you've had block 1 success, then you know your child can do this. Block 2 can be the hardest because of the pants involved. So know that you can do it, keep going, and you don't want to give up at this point. Now, I said that block 1 and 2 were really the meat of potty training, so I can very quickly go through the rest of the blocks in this video. So we'll say block 3 and all the rest. Block 3 would be practice outings. So whenever you go out, you want to show your child where the bathroom is and give them the opportunity to use it if they want to. If they say they need to pee, then you need to honor the request. Even if you don't believe that they need to go, give them the chance to try. Auto flushers are a huge one. They're really loud and kids can get scared. You don't want the auto flusher to go off if you happen to be holding your child on the potty, the big toilet. So it's great to bring some Post-its in your purse or diaper bag to cover up the sensors on the auto flushers. Definitely bring a travel potty like I showed before. It's a really great investment. You can use it in the car if your child is scared of the public bathrooms, and it's really helpful to make that transition easier. It's great to bring extra clothes, sometimes for yourself if you think you're at that point too, if you're not sure. Block 4 is underwear. It's great to use loose underwear if you can, so like a size up to give a little extra room and to help to remove that muscle memory aspect. Now, if you feel like you need a little extra support there, then you can go to cloth trainers if you want to. So when we're saying training pants, we're talking cloth. The disposable training pants are really basically diapers. They're too close to that as far as fit. They also wick the wetness away so that the kids can't feel if they're dry. So feeling the wetness is important to the process. So we are not talking about disposable underwear as far as trainers. Now, it's great to do a block 3 to 4 transition the same way that you did with block 1 and 2. That can be really helpful as well. Block 5 is self-initiation. Most kids will not even start to self-initiate until at least 3 weeks into the process, and even then it's unreliable. So they might self-initiate all 1 week and then the next week they forget. Just know that you're probably going to have to keep an eye and prompt at various points, like I said, maybe even all the way up till college. Block 6 would be night and nap training. Now, the bottom line on this is that you do want to start by age 3.5 at the latest. So this is not a rush for most people. There is a wider range of when kids are really physically able to go an entire night, which if your kid is getting a recommended amount of sleep is a very long time. So we're talking like 11 to 12 hours. That's a long time. If you see your child being consistently dry for like 5 to 7 days in a row, then you can go ahead and take the diapers off. So you might see that happening in this process. Now, the way that night training looks is that you want to use a what we call upside down pyramid of fluids. So that's extra fluids in the morning and then tapering off so that you're giving as little fluids as possible. 2 hours before the nap, even 3 if the kid is a heavy wetter. So you just kind of have to feel out what works for you guys. For naps, there's really nothing more to do beyond that. For night, a lot of kids really just can't go all the way through the night. So for night training, we start with waking them up to pee at 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And we want this to be a sleepy pee. This should not turn into 2 a.m. toddler party time. Just a quick try, as unobtrusive as possible, and then back to sleep. So if this disrupts your child's sleep, then you can go back to diapering, assuming that you have the time to do that. Now, a lot of kids don't need the 2 wakings for very long or at all, so if you are pretty sure that they don't need that 2 a.m. one, then you can quickly transition to just 1 waking, say before the parents go to bed. It's a great way to do it. And then when you kind of have to feel with your gut when you feel ready to ditch the wakings completely. When you're ready, you can stop waking completely. I know that daycare is a huge issue for most people, so I do want to talk about this just a little bit. You always want to check in with them first and do everything that you can to have your wishes met. So there's a huge range of how on board daycares are with potty training. A lot of them will have specific policies, so they can tell you what their policies are if that is the case. When your child goes back to daycare, you want to show them where the potty is, have a chosen caregiver, and a signal. So a lot of kids don't want to shout out, "Hey, I need to pee." Can be just pulling on someone's arm is a great signal. For daycare, when you're talking to them, you want to fill them in, but keep it simple, so you don't want to overwhelm them with all of your potty training info. So you want to give them an idea of how often your child pees, what their pee signs are, and if they have a special signal they're going to use with the caregiver that means that they need to pee. Now, a lot of daycares will require underwear. So again, if you have to do that, you want to go to loose underwear. It usually takes a while for kids to be ready to go to underwear. So you might have accidents for a while with that. Some daycares will insist on kids being fully potty trained or not at all. So if they do insist on rediapering, one, you can try to see if you can talk them into cloth trainers, and then there are plastic covers called like Dappy plastic covers that can be used instead. That's what I used when we went to daycare, and so that keeps the feeling of wetness and not going back to diapers. If they are not willing to do that, then if you have to rediaper, it is okay. I've worked with lots of parents who have had to work with daycare around this. The best way to approach that is just to put the diaper on at daycare and take it off at daycare, so that your child understands what happens at daycare stays at daycare. And kids get that. The bottom line is that you really can't hold off on potty training until daycare's on board. The next up is preschool, and they tend to be even more inflexible as far as potty training policies. And finally, the last thing before I close up the class, I do want to talk a little bit about what we call resetting. I know I said that we're not trying to potty train, but there are some times when you might decide that you need to give up on it for a little while and go back to it. So, when is it okay to put the diaper back on? There are 2 circumstances that we look at for this. One is if you've tried another method, you're new to OCRAP potty training, you have a total mess, disaster on your hands, then yes, put diapers back on for a little while, give everyone a break, and then start potty training in earnest again. The second would be if you've given OCRAP potty training a really good go and you just feel like it's totally not clicking. So we're not talking like 2 days of potty training. Like I said, the first few days, anything kind of goes. We're talking a good like 10 to 14 days. This usually happens with more like the under 24-month crowd. And that 10 to 14 days is a good amount of time to have tried. In general, you don't want to reset if your child is over 3 years. Very often what's happened by that time is that you've tried a few different things, maybe rediapered a few times, and so it starts giving mixed signals to the child. You do want to think of a reset as only doing this once. Again, otherwise you have the potential to be sending mixed signals to your child. Now, if you feel that you need to do this, You really do not want to do it in the middle of a battle with your child. So if you do, like if it's a power struggle or a tantrum, that sends a message to the child that if I pitch a big enough fit, then they'll just put diapers back on me, which is what I want, so I can get my way. So instead, you want to make it through the day, put the diaper back on at night, and then just keep re-diapering with no fanfare the next day. You can put the potty chair away again to take the pressure off of that. And then you want to set a new start date, say 2 to 4 weeks after that, so that you know this is not going to go on forever. Enjoy the time off, relax, give everyone a break. Don't worry about how things went before or how things are going to be in the future. Again, anxiety is the killer of potty training. So this is also a good time if you're not sure if you need to reset. That's a good time for a consult, and then you could restart with some further guidance. So you can always keep that in mind too. Okay, so we're at the very last video, and I just want to close with a reminder of the 4 nevers of potty training. So I've touched on these, but I'll talk about them just a little bit more. Number 1, never ask, always prompt. So with a choice, with a challenge, with the statement. I'll race you to the potty. You want to use the big one or the little one. Come, it's time to potty. You first or the stuffed animal first. Let's go pee together. Those are all great ways to give your child some choice and control with your desired expectations. Number 2, never give a child a diaper upon request for pee or for poop. So the bottom line here is that if they are capable and aware of the process to tell you that they need this, then they're capable of getting their pee and poop in the potty. Most kids who are doing this just have a mild fear that they're working through. It is easier to work through the fear now than it is to wait. Number 3, never post on Facebook that you are about to start potty training or that you're going to have trouble. Again, your mindset is incredibly important, and if you do this, you're going to get a million different opinions about what your issues are, and it's going to get even more confusing. So again, that's where the reader support group is much better for that. And number 4, okay, this is kind of a joke, but never say "oh crap" in front of your kids when you're potty training or later. So I hope that the information here has been helpful for you, and good luck with the process. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, and you're welcome to subscribe to my blog, like my Facebook page, and get in touch if you need any help along the way.